Today I'm going to cover the steps that you can take to become a homeowner yourself, the home buying process. So I'm going to break this down into 10 steps, real easy to follow, works in any market. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me or a local real estate agent that you may already have a relationship with. The first step is the most obvious. Talk to a real estate agent that you trust. If you don't know one to contact off the top of your head, don't just randomly Google and pick someone online. That is a shot in the dark. It may work out well for you, but it also may not. You can obviously ask your family and friends who they use and who they'd recommend. If you don't have that, you can also contact me. I have a massive network of trusted real estate agents that I'm friends with and have worked with throughout the entire country, over 3,000 in total. So even if I'm not in your market, which is Seattle for me, more than likely I can recommend a vetted agent that I would put my name behind in order to help you. A good real estate agent will dig into your goals and your motivation for wanting to buy a house, not just the specific neighborhood or your price point or the features for your house to have. That stuff's easy. Helping you to find out your goals and the lifestyle you want to live, as well as what buying that house in that neighborhood is going to do for you, is really the key and the first step to the home buying process. So once you've met with an agent, you've talked out what you're looking for in a house and your goals and your ambitions and your financial future, the next step in the process, step 2, is not looking at houses or searching online. It's getting pre-approved with a mortgage lender. Now the reason you want to do this is because, one, you want to get pre-approved because you can't write an offer in most markets without a pre-approval letter from a bank. And the real reason I always recommend to my buyers to talk to a lender before we start looking at houses online or in person is primarily because they don't really have a clear idea of exactly how much they can afford or what that payment's going to be before they talk to a lender. And there's nothing worse than starting to look online at a certain price point and then realize once you talk to a lender, oh, that monthly payment is going to be much more than I'm comfortable spending. And now you start looking at houses that are realistically in your price point and you feel pretty disappointed compared to what you were looking at before. So it's really best to get pre-approved first, as well as you want that lender to help you crunch the numbers. Because a lot of times, if you have good credit and decent income, you're going to get pre-approved for a much higher purchase price than you're comfortable spending every month. So you're looking at two things: getting pre-approved, how much you can spend, how much house you can buy, as well as figuring out what that monthly mortgage payment is going to be. So sometimes you're like, I don't want to spend any more than $2,000 a month. Well, that means with current interest rates and where my credit's at, that I can spend $500,000 on a house, or $200,000, or whatever that price may be in your market. Sometimes a really good lender that's going to do a pre-approval for you through underwriting. That loan originator, your lender, has already talked to the underwriter, who's the person who makes the decision as to whether or not you can get the money. If that's already been done as part of your pre-approval process, you are good to go. That means they can close much faster because the approval's already been done. They've done all the work up front. So typically I'd say, go with a dedicated mortgage lender, not a big box bank, because a big box bank will not do that. It's also a much more painful experience. So I'd always recommend going with a dedicated mortgage lender or mortgage broker, not a box bank that also has checking accounts and savings accounts and CDs. You don't want to get a mortgage through one of those. So one thing to keep in mind about the pre-approval process or the home buying process is you don't need 20% down to buy a house anymore. You don't need to spend years and years and years saving up 20% of your house purchase price in order to qualify for a mortgage or buy a house these days. There is conventional loans for as little as 3%, or if you have a VA loan eligibility, you can actually buy a house with a 0 down. You obviously are free to put 10% down or 20% down. That'll give you more equity and lower your payments, but it's not required anymore. Over the years, I've met a lot of would-be buyers that haven't even talked to a real estate agent because they thought, well, I'm not ready because I haven't saved up my 20% yet, but that's not the reality anymore. You no longer need 20% down in order to buy a house. So then you go back to the real estate agent and say, hey, we're pre-approved for this amount, this is the price point we're comfortable looking in, and then step 3, your real estate agent will set up a home search for you. Now I like to look at this as a partnership because obviously nowadays with Redfin and Zillow, there's some great home search websites out there, and so you're more than likely as the consumer, as the buyer, looking on those sites. But really those consumer sites aren't going to have anything different or special that your agent isn't going to have access to, because all of those listings get syndicated from the local MLS, where the agent inputs all of their listings and the houses that are for sale. It has all of the data for all the houses that are active, are pending, and have been sold historically. And then all the websites out there get syndicated to from the MLS. So I like to tell my clients that you can feel free to look on Zillow or Redfin. Maybe you're going to be looking at slightly different search criteria than what we talked about and what I'm sending you. But more than likely, you're going to see the same properties being sent to you from your agent, as well as any home search you do online, using that same search criteria. So once your agent is sending you properties from the MLS, and you're probably looking at properties online as well, you'll probably start to see some homes that stand out to you and maybe you want to see. So that's the next step in the process. Step 4 is going to be contacting your agent in order to go tour these houses. In a market like we have right now, which is, I'm recording this in February 2023, pretty much across the US, there's very little inventory. There's very little houses available on the market. So if that's the case, you're probably only going to look at 1 or 2 houses at a time, maybe 5, might meet your criteria. Now, in a more balanced market, when there's a lot more inventory available, you might look at 5, 10, 20, 30 houses in order to find that right one. You could be a little more picky, a little more selective when you have a ton of houses available. Right now, there's not a lot of houses available, so if you want to buy a house, there's really kind of slim pickings, and usually you have to be willing to compromise on things. You're probably not going to find that perfect house that checks all the boxes just because there's not very much available right now. So once you tour some houses and you say, hey, this is the one, we're really interested in this one, your agent will do a little extra work and a little extra digging. They'll call the listing agent. They'll kind of get a sense for how much interest they've had in the property, if there's any offers on the table, if there's an offer review date, if there's a pre-inspection done, that kind of stuff. Kind of get a sense for where the sellers are, how motivated they are, where the market is, and they'll be able to advise you, hey, I think you'll be able to get this house if we offer X, Y, and Z. If it's competitive, you might have multiple offer situation or an escalation clause. If it's been on the market for a while, you might have a little wiggle room, be able to make an offer at asking price, or maybe ask for some seller paid concessions towards the buyer's closing costs, or maybe even be able to make an offer under asking price and get it accepted. But really, that's where your agent's expertise in negotiating and understanding the market and understanding what it's going to take to get you into the house for the least amount of money, the most favorable terms for you as the buyer. So step number 5, once your agent has talked to the listing agent and figured out, okay, this is what I think it's going to take in order to write up an offer that's going to get accepted and get you what you want for buying this house, your agent will walk you through writing up the offer. That's going to cover all the terms for buying the house, which is going to be everything from how much the purchase price is to how much earnest money to include in the offer. If you're not aware, earnest money is money that's due up front, so it has to be liquid, that's usually due within 2 or 3 days to be deposited with escrow if you're in a state that does escrow or in a law office. Either way, that's money up front that's not in addition to the down payment. A lot of times that could be part of the down payment. Kind of think of it as money up front. It's kind of like a deposit showing that you have some skin in the game when buying this house. One of the jobs of your agent is to protect that earnest money, make sure it's never in jeopardy. Typically, you're going to have a home inspection contingency in place, and in most places that protects you and enables you as the buyer to do a home inspection on the property before you fully commit to buying it. Now, if you find there's something you don't like or something needs fixed, typically you can walk away and get your earnest money back, or you can ask the seller to fix X, Y, and Z or reduce the purchase price, and then you would move forward with the purchase. So you have a little negotiating room there based on the condition of the house that it's found in once you do your home inspection. So that's part of the purchase and sale agreement as well, part of your offer. Closing date, typically that's going to be 30 days, and that depends on the lender. If it's cash, if you're buying with cash, you can close in as little as a week. Now, once that offer is accepted, once both parties, you as the buyer and the seller, agree to those purchase terms, you're now in contract, and that starts the clock. Specifically, if you have inspection contingency, typically you're going to have 5 days or 7 or 10 days in order to have an inspection done and then respond with your inspection response. And depending on that response will determine whether or not you move forward with the purchase of the property or you get earnest money back and you back out and you continue looking for houses. Depending on your area and the age of the house, or if there's pests, as an issue, like termites or something, some areas, have termites or pest inspectors that might be part of the inspection process. Or like here in Seattle, a lot of the houses are older, and so they'll have old clay or concrete sewer pipes, and so sometimes doing a sewer scope will be part of that process to make sure that they're not collapsed or have roots in them, or going to back up into the house. That's can be a very expensive problem if it does, because you have to dig up the line. So you want to make sure those are clear. If you're in a rural area, be on septic. So a lot of times there'll be septic contingencies where it's on the seller to have the septic system inspected and pumped if necessary. So the number of contingencies and processes that happen during the contract process. One of the last milestones of the process is the appraisal. So you as the buyer have the right to do a home inspection. That's for you. You pay for it and you get a full report with pictures and the condition of the house. Now the lender also wants to make sure the house is in the condition because they are using that house as collateral for your loan. So they want to make sure the house is worth what you're buying it for or what they're lending you for the loan. So they are going to have an appraisal. So they hire an appraisal company that comes out and gives you a valuation for the house to make sure it's the same as what you're buying it for. So typically that's kind of the last thing you get. The appraiser comes out. They usually have access to the MLS key box, can let themselves in, do an appraisal. It'll take a few days. They get that back to the bank. The bank, your lender calls you and says, hey, we're great, we're at value. We're good to move forward. Or if the appraisal comes in low, then typically there's some negotiating for either the buyer, you, and include a little more money down to bridge that gap, or the seller reduces the purchase price to what the low appraisal price is, or a combination of the two. And if that agreement can't be met, then the deal falls apart and the buyer gets the earnest money back. But if appraisal is at value and everything's good to go, then you move on to step 9. So step 9 is the final walkthrough. Typically here in this market in Seattle, the buyer's allowed to do a walkthrough within 5 days of closing. And that's just to ensure that the house is in the same condition as when you saw it originally. Make sure if the seller has moved out that they actually took all their stuff with them, they didn't leave a bunch of junk, they didn't leave a mess, that they cleaned up the place, that it's in an acceptable condition for you to take once it closes. And then typically the day or two before the close date, escrow will contact you, or if you're in an attorney state, the attorney will contact you to sign the closing documents. Typically here, escrow can coordinate with a remote mobile notary to come to your place of work or your house, or you can come into the office, but they're really flexible on how that is done. So you sign your closing documents. Usually takes about an hour with the remote mobile notary, and then that is the last step in the process. That happens for both the buyer and the seller. Obviously, on the buy side, you're signing a lot more documents because you're signing all your mortgage documents, and then the day after that, typically, is going to be your close date. That's when the bank releases your funds to be recorded. Escrow releases the deed to the county. And once it gets recorded with the county, you get recording numbers back, and then it's officially closed. You have just bought your own house. So I hope going over those 10 steps of the home buying process was helpful for you. I really tried to break it down to make it really simple and easy to understand. Really, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that happens. It can be really complicated, and there's a lot of factors that can make things go sideways. So, hiring a good real estate agent, partnering with a good lender, those are 2 key relationships that are going to make that process go smoothly and keep you from not only losing your mind, but also, keep you from losing money in the purchase process, earnest money, leaving money on the table when negotiating to buy a house. So those things are really important. If you have any additional questions, reach out to me. Happy to help. Happy to connect you with a good agent in your area. I just want as many people as possible to be able to live the dream of being able to buy and own their own house, build equity, build wealth, and have the opportunity to pass on the benefit onto the next generation.